Glue the pieces besides the openings in the bulwarks, one on either side of each gun port, one on each side of the opening for the timber heads and one at each end. Lay a length of 2x5mm wood along the base of these strips, apply a little glue to the vertical strips and a very little to the bottom edge of the plank. Then fit another layer of planking, cutting short pieces so as to leave gaps for the gun ports and openings at the timber heads. Fit a third plank above the short pieces, running the full length of the bulwark. Carefully cut away any surplus in the planking that you just laid until the openings match the cutouts in the outer planking. Smooth the edges with an emery board or nail file and make sure the inner and outer edges are in line and square. Sand the top edge of the bulwarks until the planking and any projecting frames or supports are smooth and level. Line the rear gun ports with strips of 1.5x4mm wood. Line the front three gun ports with wider strips of 1.5x8mm wood, making sure that the linings protrude slightly beyond the planking on both the inside and outside of the bulwark. Now mark the centre line and measure 6.5mm in from each end. Drill a 0.7mm holes at these points, ready to pin the timber heads in place. Now glue the piece in place, making sure the pencil marks are underneath. Now line the sides of the recess. Allow the glue to dry thoroughly, then sand the lining smooth. You need to sand the outside of all the ports and the recess for the timber heads, the insides of the forward 3 ports and the recesses, as well as the top of the recess. Cut 2 100mm lengths of 4x11mm wood, paint the outer side black and glue them in position behind the aft 3 gun ports. Add a pin to each frame to fix them in position. Then cut a further 4 strips of 4x11mm wood to 25mm long and 2 lengths to 15mm long. Once again paint the outer surfaces black, then glue these pieces in position behind the gun ports. As these support beams will be inaccessible when you drill the holes for the dummy gun barrels, it is a good idea to add some scraps of plank to reinforce the joints. To prepare the cabin partitions, check that the partitions are no higher than the deck supports projecting from the hull frames. Sand them to reduce the height if necessary. Take one of the lengths and carefully sand a recess in the centre to fit around the mizzen mast. This needs to be 2mm deep. Glue the rear wall of the partition to one of the long sides, making sure it is square. After repeating the process, glue the 2 crossbeams in place. The recess made in step 2 on the first page of this stage goes on the forward beam facing the rear. Insert the test down and glue the assembly to the deck, ensuring it is central and square. Use glue and remove any excess from the deck. Once the glue has thoroughly dried, then add the two forward-facing partitions, sanding them to fit as necessary. Make sure they are square and in line with the windows towards the centre of the panels and at the bottom. Take the ship's wheel and insert two cut-off pins in the holes drilled in the bottom. Using these pins as a guide, mark the positions of the deck with a pencil and then drill 0.8mm holes at these positions. Glue all four deck support beams in place, using the test dowel to align the forward beam with the mast socket. Use a 3x3mm strip of wood to mark lines down the projecting tops of the frames, which need to be cut down to this thickness to make the bulwarks. Using a razor saw, cut away the excess frame, leaving a frame just 3mm wide. Now glue these lengths to the side of the hull in the positions shown. Note that about 10mm should be left protruding above the planks. Put the ship's wheel in position and check to see if its supports protrude above the deck support beam. If they do, cut the top off both of them carefully until they are the same height as the deck support beam. If you wish, you can apply a coat of matte varnish to the deck in the cabin area, since this will be difficult to paint after the poop deck has been laid on top. Add scraps of wood to fill the gap between the forward cabin partitions and the bulwarks. This can then be stained to match the cabin partitions if desired. With the wheel temporarily in place, lay the first plank along the guidelines to the left of the centre plank. The stern end should contact the gallery wall and the front end should line up with the front edge of the ship's wheel. Mark the plank at this point, then set the wheel aside again for the moment. Glue the first plank in place, not forgetting to simulate the caulking with a black marker pen. Continue to plank the port side of the poop deck, ensuring that each plank is cut so that the front edge of the planking is straight. Then glue the ship's wheel in position, making sure it is upright and in line with the centre line marked on the deck beams. Allow the glue to thoroughly dry, then sand the deck smooth. You should also sand the edge of the deck so that it is smooth and straight. Then carefully mark the planking pattern with a pencil.